Greetings, lovers of mysticism and the unknown. Welcome to the Incredible Stories channel. We are explorers of the unexplainable and unbelievable. Today, I will tell you an interesting story. Brew up some goodies and enjoy. In the heart of Alaska, among the vast expanses of ice and snow, was the small town of Barrow. And just north of that town is a small village. For centuries, it remained a secluded settlement, untouched by the outside world, until one day a group of geologists stumbled upon a hidden cellar on the outskirts of the village. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to investigate further. As they descended the rickety stairs, the smell of damp earth and mold filled their nostrils. The basement was dark and cold, with only a few candles flickering in the dim light. But what they saw next rendered them speechless. There, huddled together in a corner of the cellar, was a family of 5. They looked as if they were frozen in time, as if they had not aged a day. Their skin was pale and translucent, their hair matted and ungroomed, and their eyes widened with fear. The geologists approached them apprehensively, not knowing what to expect. But the family seemed to pose no threat. They were too weak and frail to even stand. "Who are you?" one of the geologists asked. The family looked at each other, as if trying to remember something from long ago. Finally, the older one, a woman who looked to be in her 30s, spoke up. "We are the Jameses," she said. "We've lived here for over 250 years. The geologists were stunned. They had never heard of anything like this before. They asked the Jameses how it was possible that they hadn't aged a day. "We don't know," the older man replied. "We've been here so long we've forgotten what it's like to be outside. We survive on the food and water that comes out at night. We've never left this basement except on a few occasions when we've heard strange noises." The geologists were intrigued. They decided to study the Jameses and find out how it was possible that they had not aged. They took samples of blood, skin, and even hair, but they couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. The days turned into weeks, and the geologists began to feel uneasy. They could not explain the Jameses' mystery. They seemed to be living in a world that defied all logic and reason. One evening, as the geologists were sitting around the fire, they heard a faint whisper coming from the basement. They listened and heard the Jameses talking among themselves. "We should tell them," said the elder. "No," said the second oldest. "They'll never understand." "But we have to try," the elder said. "We can't go on living like this." The geologists approached the basement and asked what they were talking about. "We have a secret," said the elder. "A secret that has kept us alive all these years." "What secret?" the geologists asked. The Jameses looked at each other, as if trying to decide whether to reveal their secret. Finally, the older one spoke up. "We made a deal with the devil," she said. "We traded our souls for eternal life." The geologists were stunned. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. "You're kidding, right?" said one of the geologists. "No," replied the older one. "We made the deal when we were desperate and alone. We didn't know what we were getting into. But now, after all these years, we realize we were fools to make such a deal. We were living in hell, trapped in that basement, unable to die or live." The geologists were stunned. They didn't know how to react. The geologists sat in silence, pondering what they had just heard. They had only heard of selling one's soul to the devil in fairy tales and horror stories. But here, in this basement in Alaska, it seemed all too real. "How can we help?" one of the geologists asked, breaking the silence. The elder James looked at them with a mixture of sadness and hopelessness. "There is nothing you can do," she said. "Our fate is sealed. We will have to live with the consequences of our actions." The geologists were not willing to accept that. They were determined to find a way to lift the curse that befell the Jameses. They spent the next few days researching and consulting with experts in various fields, trying to find a solution. Finally, after weeks of research, they found a way to lift the curse. It was a complicated ritual that required a sacrifice, but the geologists were willing to do anything to free the Jameses. The night of the ritual came, and the geologists got ready. They gathered around the basement, holding candles and reciting memorized incantations. They could hear the Jameses muttering inside the cellar, as if they knew what was going on outside. Finally, the ritual was completed, and the geologists opened the door to the cellar. They saw the Jameses lying on the ground motionless. For a moment, they feared the worst, but then they noticed something strange. The Jameses were aging fast, as if all the years they'd missed were catching up with them at the same time. Their skin shriveled and sagged, their hair turned gray, and their eyes grew cloudy. It was a terrifying sight, but also reassuring, for it meant that the curse was broken. The geologists led the Jameses out of the cellar and gave them food and water. They were weak and infirm, but at last they were free. As the days passed, the Jameses gradually regained their strength. They began to explore the world outside the basement, marveling at all the things they had missed. They talked to geologists, asking them about the outside world, how it had changed over the centuries. But they also talked about deeper things, about the nature of life and death, about the meaning of existence. They had been given a second chance, and they were determined to make the most of it. Eventually, the Jameses decided to leave Alaska and travel the world to experience all that they had missed. They knew they would never be able to make up for lost time, but they were determined to try. As they left the settlement, the Jameses looked back at the cellar they had spent so many years in. They knew they could never forget what had happened to them, but they also knew that they had been given a gift, a chance to live life to the fullest. And as they walked into the future, they had a sense of hope and wonder, a sense that anything was possible. After all, they had lived through the nightmare and emerged from it on the other side, stronger and wiser. What did you think of it? Write in the comments. Be sure to get likes, subscribe to our channel, and check out other amazing stories.